want to do something special for River. And this is the first time anyone has seen us like this. The kids, everybody. What do we say? We salute our brothers and sisters. Come on, everybody. We salute you. We salute River. Amen. Amen. We salute the teachers. Amen. And this is what we say from Africa, from the heart, everybody. From the heart. From the heart we do this.
Thank you so much.
Everybody happy. Oh, yes. Everybody happy. Oh, yes. Do your dance. Oh, yes. Do your dance. Oh, yes. Everybody happy. Oh, yes. Raise your hands. Oh, yes. Raise your hands. Oh,
yes. We have this we call caperucho.
Caperucho.
And we play it like this.
The teacher. Go. Viva México!
Say, hi, I'm Pearl, and today I'll be asking questions.
Yes.
Hi, I'm Pa. I'm coming here to ask some questions.
Okay, stand right here. Right here, more there. Perfect. There we go.
Reporting from River School once again, I'm here, I'm Par. I came to ask some questions. How old are you? I am 12 years old. How many brothers and sisters do you have? I have 6 brothers and 1 sister. What is your favorite subject? I like science because it teaches us about human organisms and plants. What are living things? Living things are things which have life, like people like you, and animals and plants and others. What is your favorite color? Is it blue? Your favorite puppy is a puppy. Which color? The color. I told you, puppy. of the puppies. The color which is brown and white. We are going to clean our community to make sure that where we are is clean and we are staying in the clean environment. I'm very excited with my friends for what we are going to do.
The example you have done with us, the DNA that is between you and us, is what we are here to multiply for this community of Nyahanga.
Our school plus river team is doing this together to make the community that it is clean. I really thank River Church who have came to help us. It's really hard work to pick up all this trash, but I'm really happy. Go River Church.
Today, some parents are they're losing their breath for saying Muzungu doing this.
It is not a common
It is not common to see a white guy cleaning. And you have cleaned our place and it has become clean. She has never seen white people cleaning.
This going around and picking the filth, the dirt of town is affecting today and eternity.
The school is doing good things for the community. I think now we have seen them cleaning the town. That's very good and we are really impressed.
And we shall also copy from this and do as it has been done for us.
Since we need our school to be number one, our community should be number one, our parents and the learners should be number one. Thank you.
That is your seed. Thank you for sowing. Thank you for giving. That warm applause goes to all those that sow, those that are a part of this marvelous church. And we send a very special greeting to all those children who depend on us and all those teachers that we saw at the beginning of the video. They're also a part of our personnel. They're not volunteers. They're a part of our staff. They're our employees, and we support them. The majority of them live there, so it's a great job. We can never take our finger off of our task. It's our responsibility. River School, that's our own thing. The same way River Home will be in India, and all the other things that we do thanks to your seed. All we're doing is historic, a Hispanic church supporting such a marvelous school, and this year we'll be opening up the high school, the secondary school, so that we don't lose these children, in the sense that they don't have to go to another school with a scholarship. So thank you for sowing. We're River. Are we ready? Yes or no? Very well. On the 4th of July, a patriotic date here in the U.S., July 4th, 1952, a 34-year-old woman went into the water and began to swim from Catalina Island to the coast of California. Those of us that are from here, we know that location's geography just a bit. And she was trying to be the first woman to accomplish this, crossing from Catalina Island to the coast of California. Her name was Florence Chadwick. That morning, Florence felt that the cold was very intense, the fog was very thick, and she could barely see the boats that were traveling with her to assist her. She was being watched by millions of people on national TV. On various occasions, the sharks had to be scared away with rifles, by shooting rifles, to protect the only body that was submerged underwater. The hours went on and she continued swimming, and the fatigue was never the issue. The cold water was because it was freezing her bones. Almost 16 hours later, she asked to be removed from the water. Her trainer, who was right next to her in a small boat, encouraged her so that she wouldn't give up. But instead of seeing the California coast, all she could see was a thick fog. So just a few minutes later, she said, "I can't do this anymore," and they took her out of the water. Just hours later, when her body began to defrost, she felt the shock of the failure. They took her out of the water just half a mile away from the Californian coast. Half a mile! And she realized that what had made her fail wasn't the fatigue, nor was it the cold, but what had stopped her from reaching her goal was the fog. So she told a reporter, "If I had seen land, I'm convinced, I'm persuaded that I would have accomplished it." But she didn't have a way to know how much was left. So the fog clouded her reason, her eyes, and her heart. If she had known how close she was, she could have persevered, but she lost perspective. Literally, she lost perspective and she drowned. So I say there are certain moments in life in which the fog arrives in one way or another, and we lose sight of the edge of our goal, of whatever we proposed. When the fog is thick, it's very easy to lose perspective. And sometimes we believe that things are worse than what they truly are. We give up, and then we blame the fog because we feel that we abandoned our task, that we gave up, that we let our arms down, that we gave in, and we allege, "Oh, well, I didn't have the intention of giving up, but life was unfair, and it made things impossible, it made it impossible to continue on." Or, "Well, I didn't want to give up my family, but after what my spouse did, I had no other option. I didn't have any other choice." Others say, "Well, I didn't want to give up on my dream of starting this business, but this current government is exterminating me. I either shut down or I don't know how I'll continue on." Or, "Well, I didn't want to give up congregating or coming to church, but my pastor doesn't even know who I am, and on top of it all, they never showed me the love that I'm looking for at that church, the love that I need." So sometimes we blame the fog when we give up, and in the middle of that difficult, painful circumstance, we lose faith. And that's the only reason as to why the majority of times we can't reach the edge. We don't see land. And that comes because none of us are friends of uncertainty. We weren't taught to walk towards uncertainty. We were told that whoever walks without a map or without having a goal is just improvisation, and we don't want to improvise. Without a GPS, we always tend to give up. So every time we start a journey in any area of our lives, we want to be sure that we know we'll get there. It happens when we get in the car. We trust that a satellite that's in outer space is speaking to a computer that's in our car, and the indications are coming step by step, turn by turn, always with enough anticipation. Otherwise, we get upset. And it's so easy that we don't even have to think about it. I know there are people here, like myself, who put on a GPS to get home, and they've been doing this for 30 years because they don't want to think about anything. A feminine, gentle, sensual woman voice with a Spanish accent says, "Please shift over to the right lane and make a right at the next fork towards your final destination, which is on your left." Others have a guy voice for their GPS. I don't know. But in our lives, many times we have to maintain our course. And in fact, we have to do that even when we don't know where we're going. If only it were as easy as driving a car. And let's think about all those moments when we wanted to know more details about our life, to not have to stress, to know where we were headed, but we didn't have the details. Real life doesn't work this way. If only we had a forecast of life the way we have a forecast of weather, where we can see from what time to what time it'll be raining, when the sun will come out, when there will be winds. But real life doesn't work that way. It doesn't work that way in that heartbreaking moment where a couple, month after month, sees a negative sign on the pregnancy test, while the chronological clock continues advancing. It doesn't work for the employee that works so hard, hour after hour, trying to get a raise. Year after year, they're still earning the same amount. They don't get a raise or a promotion. She's not seen. This doesn't work for those that went through 4 decades of life and are still waiting to find that very special person that just never arrives. So, no satellite can tell us where we should turn in the situations that truly matter in life. And without a doubt, the roads in life are sometimes very stony and rocky, confusing. Live long enough and you'll realize that sometimes the roads are longer than when you were making plans. You thought they would be shorter, but we realize they're not. And what's worse is that many of these paths, and I'm talking about life, many of these paths are not well made. And in many cases, we're like this swimmer, Florence. We don't know how much is left, and we continue on blindly. As I was preparing this message, I was looking for biblical references in relation to the topic of racing or marathons. And I was surprised to see how many times races and marathons are mentioned in Scripture. We're familiar with the race that's mentioned in Hebrews or in some of Paul's letters. It was something very typical to mention competition amongst the Greeks. And the writers realized that races were the metaphors, the perfect hyperbole, because the principal objective in life is to always get to a determined goal, a determined finish line. And races demand preparation, discipline, effort, training, special diet. And of course, there is a reward that awaits those that run the race well. But I was reading that even in the Old Testament, much before the Greeks appeared with their fanatism over racing, David describes in Psalm 19:5, he says, "It bursts forth like a radiant bridegroom after his wedding. It rejoices like a great athlete eager to run the race." And then Samuel tells us that the kings boasted about their power by putting soldiers to run in front of the horses. They were runners that were quicker than the riders, in fact. And in Ecclesiastes, Solomon tells us that the race isn't always won by the fastest runner. And Solomon said this long before Jose Alfredo Jimenez composed The King. And he made it, and it was made famous by Luis Miguel. Before that song became famous. The race isn't for the fastest. I was also told by a mule driver that you don't have to arrive first, but you have to know how to arrive. Not just in Africa do they learn about Mexican things. I also do. So it's not just about arriving first. You have to know how to get there, like the song says. And I've told you on many occasions that while I was going through high school, Werner von Siemens, in Argentina, we would compete in many different disciplines. We would compete in sports against other students from other schools, like the Ford School, the automotive school, or Flandria. It was a cotton factory in Argentina. And I remember signing up for something called the relay race. And I was always thin. Amongst the few virtues that I've always had, I was always skinny. I can't remember myself being swollen. So since I was always a featherweight, I assumed that my genetics would exempt me from training. So I ignored the trainer when he said, "Oh, prepare for the race, build up your resistance." I assumed that I could run fast and that I knew how. So while my classmates trained all week, I was resting with the logic of, all I have to do is race, all I have to do is run, hold the baton, and pass it to one of my teammates. It can't be so difficult. I've run more than that in all my childhood trying to escape a slap from my mom. So the great day came, and I was the second leg of the relay. I was 300 meters away from the finish line. It was a 400-meter race. I was ready to receive the baton from my teammate. While on the parallel lane, they were doing the same, all of our opponents, our rival team. We heard a gunshot, which meant the race had started, and I saw the runner next to me regulating his breathing, galloping. I didn't understand why he ran so slow. I had to get the baton to the next line, to the next runner. So I ran out like a demonized roadrunner. And now I had to run 300 of my own meters, but I didn't calculate my resistance, my stamina. I didn't regulate my breathing. I didn't regulate my speed. And so I immediately began to feel a strong pain in my groin. I didn't even know that I had a groin until that day. No, really. I began to wobble, but it was too late. I felt that I was going to die by an attack of groinitis right there on the track. So I made a decision. It was selfish, it was whimsical, but it's what appeared most wise at that moment. I sat down on the track with the baton in my hand until the pain went away. And from the stands, the whole school began to shout at me, "Get up, continue the race." But I couldn't move. I had a pain that was killing me. So after 100 meters, I had run 100, I still needed 200. I sat down on the track with my baton. Legend says that my teammate that was waiting for me 300 meters ahead was still waiting for me there. He's still waiting for me there right now. He's waiting for me to arrive. Hey, go home. I don't think I'll make it, my friend. It's been more than 40 years. I'm not going to make it. So you have to know how to get there. That's what it means to run. And life is a marathon where you have to know how to arrive. But when we begin, it's always with impetus, with spirit, with vehemence, with fieriness, ardor, spirit, vigor, vitality, outburst, until the pain appears in your groin. And at one point, the challenge of running our race is reduced to the following. If we're going to give up, and if we're going to sit on the track, or we're going to continue on with pain, without pain, it doesn't matter. Like we're reminded in Ecclesiastes, faith on its own is not a guarantee. The race isn't just for the fast, nor is the battle just for the strongest. Those that tend to win are not those that start first, but those that deny themselves of giving up, those that say, "I'm going to continue however." So the writer of the Hebrews invites us to run with perseverance. Man, does that word escape between our fingers like wet sand. Perseverance. The race that we had ahead of us. You know, I could have said, run it quickly, or make sure that you leave your rivals way behind you. No, but he says, perseverance. The Greek word for race is agon. Agon, the way it sounds. That's where our famous word comes from. Agony. So the word indicates that the race that we have ahead of us in life is a race that's a sign that isn't fun. It's not fun all the time. Life isn't a tourist trip. Having kids isn't it. Getting married isn't it. Being boyfriends and girlfriend isn't it. Traveling through the world, having vacations, none of that is necessarily always fun 100% of the time. Life isn't a walk on the beach. It's running until your side hurts, until your lungs burn, until our muscles begin to cramp up. get stiff, but you have to continue. Mothers know this. What would you have given when you were a young mother? Let's not talk about those that have been mothers at an older age, but when you were 20-something years old and you had to be a new mother that was very young with all your life ahead of you, what would you have given to have a 2-year break? Right? Not just leaving the baby for 20 minutes to go pee in peace. But what about 2 years? Hey, can you take care of him for 2 years? Hey, I'll come back for him in 2 years, neighbor. I need to have a little bit of fun. No, it was all about continuing on and on and on. The men that had to go out and provide for their homes, to support their family, because you had to buy diapers and you had to buy groceries and be a provider. You have to continue on and on and on. I was recently reading a statistic that tells us that 70% of those that are called to call God give up before they produce the greatest impact in their ministry. Before they were able to transmit their wisdom or what they learned, they give up. They surrender. These are the people that forget that it takes no less than 30 years to make success from night to day. Success night to day takes 30 years to prepare. The thing is, people only see the success. They say, oh, this guy was so lucky. They were touched by a divine hand. But they don't know what happened behind the scenes. We can't pretend to get to the Jordan River ignoring 30 years of working as a carpenter. We can't forget that. So it's that perseverance that will take us to complete that vision. So, the way in which we keep ourselves on track is going to be determined by the parameters of longevity in our ministry, in our lives, in our assigned purpose. The Bible says that we can never pick the level of difficulty or the level of the track that we're going to run on, or the obstacles that we're going to face, like in video games. In video games, you say, I'm going to start on the easy mode, and then once I learn it, I'm going to up it to a more difficult setting. Life isn't like this. We don't know what difficulty we're going to be dealt. If it were up to us, we would all run on a tropical beach, all downhill. It's great to run downhill, isn't it? We would put oasis of water all over the track. We would put on headphones with whatever band you want. When I lived in Miami, I would ride my bike almost every day, almost every evening for hours, because it was all flatlands. As soon as I got to California, I went out to ride my bike in the hills, and I came back half an hour later with my bike in one hand and my lung in the other. I hung up my bike, and I swore I would never go out again. Either they remove the mountain and the hills, or I won't go out again. So sometimes we wait for life to be a fun race that's pleasant, because we say, well, in the end, we're running with Jesus, right? But let's not forget that for some, the end of the race is to avoid the fatigue, the obstacles, the sweat. But you can't. Those steep hills in life are a part of the plan. I like to ask people wherever I go what things they would change in their lives if they could. It's a question that I tend to ask during the conference as well. What things would they change in their lives if they could change one thing or a pair of things? And the answers that I hear always have the tenor of fatigue, of anxiety, of a burden. My son is losing a battle against cancer, and we're very upset with God. We can't understand why God allowed this. We've been married for less than 5 years, yet we both feel like throwing in the towel. We don't know why we got into this. She's been sick for years. The doctors can't diagnose her, and the only thing we know is that each day she gets worse. We love our son who has a disability. We love him the way he was born. But sometimes we're so overwhelmed, so discouraged to know that we're not going to enjoy the normal that other families enjoy. Others say, I feel invisible. Women say, I feel invisible to my husband or to my children. Or she sees a future of debts that never end. He can't leave his depression. She can't find a job. He's sure that nobody will love him. I can continue on, but we all have our own stories. And many people, after years of their Christian pilgrimage, no matter what their spiritual size is, no matter what they do, they get to that point, that breaking point, where they don't find the strength, they don't find the desire or energy to continue on, and they say, I've come this far, and they sit down on the track with a baton in hand. This happens to teachers, professionals, clerics. We all get to a point in our lives where we want to give up, and those that say, oh, it never happened to me, well, it's because you haven't lived yet. Live long enough and you'll get to a point where you'll want to give up in any area of your life. The exact moment, GPS would say, at the exact moment in which we lose sight of the coast, the moment in which we lose sight of the purpose as to why we even enrolled in this race. It happens in marriages, it happens when we decide to be parents, it happens when we say yes to a call from God. At one point we lose sight of the coast and we ask, does this even make sense, what I'm doing? I don't know if you've ever tried to build a puzzle without the picture on the box, because on the box you can see how the end product will look. If it's a cat, if it's a paradise, if it's a mother-in-law running away, but there's always a picture. When I was a child at home, we had many puzzles at home, for rainy days especially. Except somebody had the genius idea of throwing away all the boxes because they took up too much room. So they were in plastic bags, all the puzzles. And we didn't know if these pieces corresponded to this puzzle or to the other one. We didn't know if they mixed. So I would say, well, I'm going to assemble something. And I would assemble the easier puzzles, but I would get frustrated because I had no model to compare it to. So I would throw everything back into the plastic bag. So it's easy to give up when we have a couple of pieces, but we don't have the final complete image to compare to. The final complete image is the guide to get through the entire process. It shows us where we're going. If only those that went through university could have an image of the diploma. They have it in their imagination, but imagine if somebody went into the future and brought back a diploma to the present time, saying, here's what you're going to earn. Here's the certificate of so much sacrifice. This is the business that you're going to start when you finish your school. If you could just see the results, it gives us the certainty that everything is going to link together and it'll all make sense. The author of the Hebrews describes it in the following way. He says, faith is the guarantee, I guarantee you, that whatever you're waiting for will pass, will come. That's what faith is, the guarantee, the picture, the certainty, that security of what cannot be seen yet. The certainty of what you're not seeing yet. That's what a cook does. They have the certainty that by mixing all these correct ingredients, they'll make a good plate. They can't cook without faith. It's the certainty of what they expect. Faith is a tool that makes us see what we still can't naturally see. So by definition, faith is the trust that we use to continue believing that all the pieces in our lives will fit in one way or another, even if we don't have the final image to show us the model. Because maybe there are people here that say, I can't imagine anything in my future. I just see chaos. I don't know how this will end well. If only I had the box the puzzle came in to see. Well, faith is not needing that box. It's saying, I don't know how it's going to fit in, but a picture will come from this. It's believing that God has a purpose, even if the fog doesn't allow me to see the coast today. Still going to the coast, even if you don't see it, to say, I think it's over there. We don't see it, but we trust in that coast. I'm going to tell you something interesting. Here at River, we have a team of pastors, very good, very effective, and they tend to visit our members that are hospitalized. If we find out that somebody's hospitalized, somebody from our pastoral group goes to visit you. But let me tell you something. You don't want to see me in your hospital room, because for reasons of time, we've decided to delegate many responsibilities. And if I go visit someone in the hospital, it's because the situation demands it, or it's a very serious scenario. So the pastors in our team do a great job. They know that if the situation is too serious, they say, hey, can you come? I think you should come. So this is what I want you to know. If you go in for a minor surgery, maybe like a liposuction for your abdominals, or if you get a hair transplant, when you wake up from the anesthesia, if I'm next to your bed, don't be happy. It's not good news. I didn't go check out how your hair turned out or how your tummy went away. No, I'm there because something terrible happened during your liposuction. Maybe some of the fat in your body went to your brain. Maybe they transplanted hair somewhere they shouldn't have. I want you to understand that if I'm there, it's because we're about to say a final prayer. You get it? Oh, when is Pastor Dante going to come? Well, if I'm there, you're about to feel extreme anointing. Not too long ago, I was on tour, and I had to officiate a funeral via streaming. A beloved woman's mother here from this church. Since I was traveling, I did it through the live stream. Sorry, not the funeral, but this elderly woman's final hours. I was in another country, so I went into my hotel room, and I could see the family around the bed, and I could feel the pain. I could hear all the questions without answers. That always happens, no matter who it is that's passing away or how old they are. And many of those family members that were there around the bed, they were not Christians, but they listened to me with profound respect. And I've learned, unfortunately, I've learned it through age. I wish I knew it when I was younger, but sometimes the best we can do in those cases is not gun them down with biblical verses. It's very strange for me to go and say, oh, the Bible says, or the Word says. No, just be with them and share their pain. Cry with those that are truly crying. And in that instant, while I was sharing a few words with them, while I shared the pain, a thought came to my mind, and I said, here, in this type of moment, is when we truly realize if we believe what we say we believe, if we believe what we preach, in those moments, there in the hallways of a hospital, or around the bed of a dying person, or standing on the grass of a cemetery, when we have to trust that the final image, the complete image exists somewhere, even if we never see it on this side of the sun. And sometimes life leaves us with a few pieces in our hands that don't even make up a puzzle. But let's not just talk about death. But let's talk about a rejected school application, a college application, or not getting a call back from that job interview, even if they promised you, or another relationship that doesn't end in marriage, another medical checkup with a negative diagnosis. The exact moment in which the fog takes away our vision from the coast, that's where you, for the first time, redefine the significance of your faith. If we don't redefine what our faith is, then we're going to give up half a mile away from the edge. The faith that gives us the trust to continue believing and the courage to not give up is not faith in circumstances. It's not, oh, I have faith that they'll get out of that bed, or I have faith that they'll be healed. No, sometimes we need faith in God's character, in God's sovereignty. He knows what He's doing. There's a faith that sets us free, that blessed faith, and there's a faith that binds us. But they're both faith. Sometimes faith heals, of course it does. Sometimes faith pays debts. But other times, it gives us something more precious, the strength to deal with those days where we don't find the healing, or when we're not sure of how we're going to pay our debts on Monday, yet the faith is there. Sometimes you can see faith in a hospital waiting room with the wife on her knees praying for her husband that went into the operating room to have a tumor removed. And the doctor comes out and says, "Woman, or miss, there is no tumor." "What do you mean there's no tumor?" "Well, we opened him up and there's nothing there. We don't know what happened. It's not there. It doesn't coincide with the x-rays. We just can't explain it. It's a miracle." That's sometimes how we see faith. We've heard it. But other times as well, faith is with a wife at a cemetery, seeing how the coffin of her beloved descends underground, and she has to have faith to learn to live with this new normal. I know I wasn't going to hear many amens, but it's the truth. I've seen both examples. And God was present with each one of those people. There are parents here that prayed with faith and their children were set free, but I've also seen parents that I had to help officiate the funerals for their children. Yet faith supported them. Faith that sets free and faith that binds when we can't see anything. When there's nothing, that's faith. Sometimes faith can be seen in a missionary that decides to leave his comfort to go and take the message to a distant village, and something happens, something similar to what we saw in Uganda. A revival breaks out. And sometimes faith can also be seen in the life of another missionary that leaves his comfort. He goes to a similar village, and they don't let him preach, and they threaten him. And he spends 20 years there without converting anyone to Christ. So why does he stay? Because of faith. Sometimes faith can be seen when someone goes to the office and they tell their manager, "You know what, I'm not going to lie to a customer. I'm not going to scam them. Forgive me, because it goes against my convictions." And they take that risk, and they end up with a promotion. They say, "Gentlemen, whoa, what a lesson in life." Other times, that same faith will land you on the street with no job. "Oh, you don't want to lie? All right, get out of here." Faith can be seen in a marriage that rebuilds itself, or for some reason in a divorce in which these two have to learn to live in this new normal and process it. Both need faith. It's not that one fell from faith and the other one now has more faith. No, our faith is placed in God and in that final frame that we may not see in its entirety on this side of eternity. Our ancestors died without knowing that a Messiah would come, the people from the Old Testament. Yet they died with the hopes that it would happen, but they didn't see it. So when we measure our faith in the spiritual field and what's visible, it's not faith. It's either Mary Kay, Amway, or Herbalife, but it's not faith. Now I included another one so Herbalife isn't so alone. True faith continues believing even when the puzzle pieces don't seem to fit in. But that faith holds you up. I don't understand, but I'm going to continue on. I don't know what God is doing with all this, but He doesn't have to explain His purposes to me. But I believe. If not, why do we sing Sovereign God? Sovereign God means God, the King. This isn't a republic, it's a kingdom. He isn't an elected president that was voted in by democracy. No, He's a King of kings and Lord of lords. He does what He wants, and no one can ask Him about what He's doing. So, the point is that traditionally, it is believed that the condemnation and execution of the Apostle Paul occurred under the reign of Emperor Nero, a dog name, but or a pizzeria, but this was the name of a great emperor. That's when Paul was decapitated and relieved of his functions for the kingdom. It is believed that his remains are stored in St. Paul's Basilica. There's no proof, there's no way to verify that his remains are there. This is outside of Rome. But now imagine Paul spending his last moments here on earth, writing the last thoughts that would model the era of Christianity just as we know it today. And there, in the final moments of his life, he reveals what's inside his heart. I say that you reveal your heart when you're at the gate of death, when you're at the door of death. Yesterday I had an interview, and I was telling the reporter, nobody dies as an atheist. And she said, are you sure? They even put it in the caption because it surprised her. She said, are you sure? I said, yeah. Nobody says, oh, I'm atheist. Don't come and pray for me. I want to be eaten by worms. Even the biggest atheist says, hey, can you pray just in case? When they're going down that final tunnel, everyone asks for a prayer. Nobody dies an atheist under fire. Because that's where you have no intimidation, no fear to anything or anyone on this side of eternity. You lose fear of what people will say when you're about to die. What can threaten a dying man that knows, in this case Paul, where he's going? What can threaten him? Tomorrow we're going to cut your head off. And? That's why the police takes confessions on a deathbed very serious, because they say that these words of people that are dying are filled with truth. It could be a matter of guilt, for example. Guilt makes them tell the truth. We've heard stories of last-minute confessions where the gentleman tells his future widow, that'll be a widow in just a few minutes, that he has 2 other families, to not be surprised when the other 2 families come to his funeral. And you ask, well, why did he say it? Why did he have to make it all bitter? Well, his guilt doesn't allow him to not share. It's like in movies when the delinquent says, I won't betray my friends. I'll never tell you what port the drug ship will get to. I'll see you in hell. No, that doesn't happen. That's a movie. That's film. He lets everything out once he's finally dying. And in his prison cell, Paul, whose blood would scatter over all of his letters and epistles, he explains in that very moment, in his final moment, that whatever we're suffering, whatever is happening in our present moment cannot compare to what we're going to experiment in heaven. And Paul had a lot of time to think about our next life. The second book of Timothy is the last letter that Paul wrote before he died. He's in a cold jail cell, waiting for his head to roll on the ground. He's waiting to be executed. And he writes his best prose on the eve of his execution. But the greatest strands of his wisdom aren't just hidden in what he said, but in the way that he said them. His message to Timothy is, never abandon the game. It's always possible to score in the last minutes or in extra time. It's always possible to turn the game around. He's teaching his son Timothy, his spiritual son, what any young man would want to hear from his father. Never give up. And he writes to him in the second book of Timothy 4:4, but you should keep a clear mind in every situation. Don't be afraid of suffering for the Lord. Work at telling others the good news and fully carry out the ministry God has given you. As for me, my life has already been poured out as an offering to God. The time of my death is near. He said, the time of my death is near. I have fought the good fight. I have finished the race. And I have remained faithful. I didn't lose it. I didn't lose my faith. And now the prize awaits me, the crown of righteousness, which the Lord, the righteous judge, will give me on the day of his return. And the prize is not just for me, but for all who eagerly look forward to his appearing. Marvelous words from Paul, right? So when the curtain begins to close on his life, Paul scribbles the last phrases of wisdom that are going to shake the world. Paul wants to be sure that he's effective in leaving a legacy in the last hours of his life, just the way he did during the rest of his life. I'm going to share a secret that you can only learn through age. People are going to forget all the good that we've done because of one bad thing we do at the end of our lives. That's how we are. Think about a soccer player from your team. Let's not mention Messi so you're not offended. He can score goals and goals and win trophies, but if he loses the last game, then he can't go back to his country. Oh no, he should have retired. What a shame. He's not even trying anymore. He just cares about money. He doesn't represent the shirt. That's how we are. And with the same bar that we measure, the rest measures us. It doesn't matter what we've done. Robert Schuller, the founder of the Crystal Cathedral, was a man who, when he called on the phone, if his production team called someone such as Arnold Schwarzenegger, the governor, or Charles Heston, or Frank Sinatra, if he called them on the phone, they would all come to the Crystal Cathedral because he was the most influential man in the American Union. People would watch him and listen to him live on TV. And in his last years, his family had to ask for money to buy him a coffin. People turned their backs on him for whatever reason, for little reasons. Point is, you shouldn't measure people that way. It's not fair, but unfortunately, it's the truth. Everything that we've done in life won't matter due to one thing that we mess up on. So it's about knowing how to get there, not just getting there. That's why Paul teaches Timothy that beginning isn't enough, but he should finish. Ecclesiastes 7:8 tells us finishing is better than starting. Finishing is better than starting. So it doesn't matter how we begin. We all begin bright. We're all like Pinky in the Brain. We'll conquer the world, Pinky. All right, well, where are the conquerors? How do we end up? What's the difference? Well, perseverance. Being perseverant in the race. He didn't say train more, be thinner, focus on buying sports clothes. No, he said persevere. Two athletes with the same capacity, they join the same team. One makes it to the big leagues, the other never plays again, other than their participation in high school. Two business people have the same assets, they studied the same thing. One earns millions, the other one goes bankrupt. Don't tell me that it's luck, that it's just a random favor. No, that God bless one. No. Two leaders receive the same call from God on the same night or the same morning. One impacts millions, and the other one goes back to driving for Uber. They got tired. What makes the difference between the two? Often you hear sports commentators say, this man has what he needs to win. This player has that missing piece, has that fire. And I ask, what's that sacred fire within them? It can be what? Trust, confidence, charisma, or an enchanting spirit, competitiveness. Yeah, maybe it's all that. It varies from person to person, but I suspect that the most important thing above all that is perseverance. There's no one here that doesn't know the story of the tortoise and the hare. The hare said, running a race against a tortoise? It's easy. Piece of cake. I'm going to take a nap and then run. But the tortoise continued on and 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 on. And then when the hare woke up, the tortoise had already won the race. Perseverance, determination, tenacity, discipline. Like my friend Jokoi Kenji says, discipline sooner or later defeats intelligence. Always. Discipline defeats intelligence, he says. He's half Colombian, half Japanese. He says, Japanese people aren't more intelligent than Hispanics, but they are more disciplined. He shares marvelous things. He says, when a Japanese person sets a meeting at this time, then it's at that time, not a little bit later. He says that the first time a Hispanic person set a meeting with him to talk about business at a cafe, they had agreed upon 8 a.m. And at 8 a.m., Jokoi was there. And he saw the clock. It was 8:15, 8:20. And he called the person, and the Hispanic asked, hey, are you there already? And Jokoi says, yes, where are you? And then the Hispanic man said, yeah, I'm on my way. I'm almost there. And that, in our terms, can mean I'm still in bed, or just got out of the shower, or I'm stuck in traffic. So he arrived an hour and a half later without saying I'm sorry. And then Joe Hui calls again and says, hey, you remember we had a meeting for 8 a.m. And then the Hispanic man said, well, I'm about to fall on you right now. So he looked up. But that's what he uses to explain. Discipline is the self-regulation of your behavior. That's why there are people that are condemned to be employees. Because if they're not told what time to come in and what time to leave, then the lice eat them up. The fleas eat them up. If they're not told, oh, this is the time for lunch, this is the time to clock out, it's because these people don't have self-discipline. I always tend to say that no one can demand more discipline than what I demand of myself. I'm aware of all my defects, and you're witnesses that I speak about them here openly. But I also have to recognize without modesty, because I've earned it, without any false modesty, that I'm the most professional and disciplined man that I know. I've never met a more disciplined man than myself. Never. Never. It sounds Argentinian. Well, put up with it. But I've never met him. I've never met someone more professional than myself. And I worked for CNN, and I worked in TV my whole life, but I've never met somebody that arrived earlier than myself or that left later than myself. I never got to a TV studio without learning my script, without learning the life of the guest. Always. And I've never stood here without preparing myself. Never. Nobody can say, I'm going to demand something of you that you're not already doing. No. Nobody can demand more of myself than I'm already doing. Discipline is doing what I have to do when I have to do it, whether I feel like it or not. And even if it doesn't make sense, I'm going to do it. I once told my mother when I was little, Mom, I don't feel like going to church this Sunday. And she was very understanding, very strange with this woman. She said, it's normal for that to happen to you, son. I understand it. And I said, so then that means I don't have to go? And she said, no. This Sunday you go, you just won't want to. But you'll go. I don't feel like going to school. Yeah, well, the same thing used to happen to me, son. So then what? Well, then you'll go to school with no desire. You'll work with no desire. You'll serve God with no desire. There are days where I feel like serving God with desire, but there are other days where I just don't feel like it. But that doesn't change my perseverance. I was assigned a task in the kingdom, so I can't depend on that, on my desire. The pilot has to fly the plane whether he feels like it or not. He doesn't kill everyone because today he doesn't feel like flying. He knows that it's his assignment. So, during years, it was believed that any person's potential was their intelligent coefficient, or their coefficient of intelligence. I always wondered, what's my coefficient of intelligence? But I was in the negatives. But that's not the point. There are people that have a very, very high IQ, yet they're failures. And experts have come to argue that there is something that goes beyond success. Something that can help you be successful much more than your IQ. And that's your level of resilience. How much you can resist, how much you can put up with. So the person that refuses to give up has a very high IQ. Their threshold of resistance is very high. You know, our kids, their threshold of resistance is very low. They want to kill themselves when their Wi-Fi is low. The video takes too long to load. No, I want to kill myself. Or you want to kill them. And you say, Lord, I brought them into this world and I can take them out. And those of us that have gone through things, I haven't gone through cancer in my own life like others, and so I respect them, but their level of adversity, their threshold for adversity is very high. So when the enemy comes to try and knock them off their horse, they say, really, Satan? That's all you got? Really? I was expecting more. And there are leaders that have the heart and the mind to lead, but they don't have the shoulders to hold that weight. They have the knowledge, but they can't stand the burden. They can't deal with adversity. It surprises me that there are more and more leaders that I know that become depressed. And I say, hey, you're not at the church anymore? And they say, no, I'm taking a sabbatical. Well, why are you taking a break? I'm under too much pressure. But what about the people? The people on the ship, on the Titanic, they're going to look for the captain, but he's no longer on the ship. The good news is that if we can't do much to improve our IQ, we can do a lot to drastically increase our coefficient against adversity. With God, we can strengthen and develop our ability to put up with adversity and to persevere. Someone has to say amen. There's a marathon in Boston that was made very famous by a hill that's on the track at the 30th kilometer. It's called Heartbreak Hill. I put it in English here, but since my English is very British, I don't want to embarrass you. Say it with that terrifying Spanglish. Heartbreak Hill. They say that there at that hill, the runner's heart says, that's enough. And this hill is at the worst point of the track, because just as the runner begins to store away energy to finish the race, they face this hill. And experts say that this is the wall that many runners crash against. It's when the body goes through all of its reserves of glycogen, so the muscles absorb lactic acid. When lactic acid replaces glycogen, that's a terrible example, but for you to understand it in a simple way, it's when you have a car with gasoline and you switch it to a different type of gas that doesn't let it continue on. All professional runners say that they crash against that invisible wall at about the 29th kilometer. So the hills in life that we are not able to climb can also break our hearts, literally. We set goals, we give the best version of ourselves, but then we crash against the wall. These are the moments that reveal the coefficient of our adversity. They leave us exposed so that we can see what we're made of, what kind of wood we're made of, or if we're made of butter. Sometimes the worst thing isn't the hill. Sometimes the worst thing is discovering that we don't have the resistance to get by it. And Paul describes continually the challenges of these moments. The Corinthians are running a race. The journey is filled with hills, steep, long hills and mountains. And Paul explains to them that the only way to get through that wall is by the power of God. In the second letter of Corinthians, chapter 4, verse 8, he says, we are pressed on every side by troubles, but we are not crushed. We are perplexed, but not driven to despair. We are hunted down, yes, but never abandoned by God. We get knocked down, but we are not destroyed. Someone has to celebrate these words. We get knocked down, but we are not destroyed. In more simple terms, you're going to crash your face on the canvas more than once, but in one way or another, you're going to get back up and you're going to continue on. So Paul tells the Christians, that's how we are. That's what we're made of. We're those that get up when we get knocked down. And not until we hear the bell, in the ring, we're going to continue fighting that battle. So to run the race with perseverance, we have to have a challenging, unbreakable spirit that robustly denies to put a period where God is placing a comma. It's not a final period. Proverbs 24:16 says, the godly may trip 7 times, but they will get up again. It's not saying that that's the maximum amount. It's just saying that it could have said, the godly may trip 50 times, but they'll get up 50 times. But one disaster is enough to overthrow the wicked. It means, does this mean that it exempts Christians from calamities? No. It's just that calamities don't knock us down and keep us there. What gave Paul the strength to get back up? Why would he get up every time he got knocked down? Well, 2 Corinthians explains what motivated him his whole life. He says, my love for Christ, Christ's love, controls our lives. And I felt very tired, very overwhelmed many times in life, like all of you. It's impossible for me to remember a time in these last 36 years of service in which I didn't have to face discouragement. What obligates me to continue on? Well, if I'm being honest, sometimes it was guilt. That was my gas. It was a corrosive combustible, of course, because I know what I said, what I thought, what I did. I know the mistakes in my past. I know the mistakes I continue committing, and so I feel that I have continued on this journey to compensate for so much foolishness, so many mistakes, so many errors. So I say, well, out of guilt, I'll continue on. It's the least I can do for God for what he did for me. But in the end, that same guilt ends up toppling me. Guilt never helped me get back up. Sometimes I've allowed fear to be that gasoline. I do the right things for the wrong reasons. I feel obliged to continuing on this race because of what others might say. They'll say that I abandoned it. I don't want them to kill me on social media. They'll say I failed, or fear of hell. So that fear follows me, so I begin to run the race. But I'm so focused on what's chasing behind me that I lose notion and I lose sight of the edge of where I'm headed, and I don't see the goal, and so I sit down on the track. Paul says, not fear, not guilt. God's love, Christ's love should be your gasoline. Your love for Christ should be so passionate that it can't stop you. You can't stop, you won't stop, even when you have every reason to do so. It's the certainty of what we await. It's the conviction of what we don't see. So the challenge is to maintain your faith when all we can see before us is a heartbreak hill. I want you to think about specific moments in your life. Come on, really. Some might say, oh, well, I don't have that bravery that you mentioned. No, come on. Wasn't your life a product of perseverance to get to that victory? How many times did you feel like giving up and you didn't do it, so you're here? And today you're celebrating it because you didn't give up. You didn't surrender. You didn't give in. Let's see. You have a certain disability in learning, but it's tough for you to study. Yet you passed that test. You made it through. You learned it by memory. You had to put in 3 times the effort than others maybe, but you did it. They treated you unfairly. We can really speak on what true bullying was back in the day, even if it wasn't mentioned that way. We even received it from our teachers, and we made a path for ourselves into our adult lives. You were about to abandon it all in your marriage, yet now you're celebrating another anniversary. You battled against an addiction, but now you've been sober for years. The process of chemotherapy and radiation was devastating, but you finally heard the word remission. So it's possible to have these moments of celebration. But the best of all will be when we get to heaven, because Paul says that what awaits us there, compared to our current problems, he says today's problems, no matter what it is, cancer, whoever dies in your family, these are just light, trivial, innocuous, fleeting, superficial, childish, ephemeral problems. They don't exist. And the person saying this is a guy whose health has deteriorated. Maybe he's semi-blind, confined to a prison. What's his future? That tomorrow the executioner will cut off his head. Yet he's celebrating because he knows what awaits him. No human mind can understand this. And I'm going to tell you something that sounds terrifying, but I want you to tweet this. Us Christians know how to die like no one else. That's what we're made of. We don't give up in the face of death, because in any case we know that behind the curtain or behind that heartbreak hill we'll find our celestial home. And that conviction gives us the energy when we have no strength. It makes us get on our feet again, yes or no? When the world knocks us down, It makes us rise again. It makes us continue on our race. And this is the message that God sent me to give to you personally. Are you ready for this? Yes or no? Look at me, look at me, look at me. And listen to me with all your attention, because I'll only say it once. You're going to run this race called life. You hear me? You're going to expose yourself again. You're going to get up. You're going to put your feet on the track again. It's a choice that you're going to make every day until you die. You'll say, today I'm going to choose courage. Today I'm going to choose to continue this race whether I feel like it or not. And God tells me to tell you, and I'm not interested in your excuses. You're going to get out of bed. You're going to leave the word depression behind, and you're going to run again. And God wants me to tell you this. You're going to fail. Some are saying, okay, Lord, I understand you. I'm going to run, and I'm going to run the risk of failing. And God says, no, 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 you're not understanding me. You're not listening to me. What I'm saying and what you're hearing, you're eliminating the phrase that you're going to fail. I never said that it would be a possibility, that there would be a risk or that you could fail. No, you're not running the risk of failing. If you go out to run, you're going to fail more than once. God is aware of that. That's why he asks for perseverance. He doesn't ask that you arrive quickly with no failures. And throughout the journey of life, you're going to find many walls, many hills, many heartbreak hills, many hills that break your will to continue. But you're going to continue. You're going to get up. You're going to take a second wind. And you're going to get to that blessed goal even if you die trying. Dead or alive, you're going to make it. Because that's where you're going to realize if you believe in what you preach. And your discipline and perseverance are going to defeat intelligence, gifts, resources, and talents. And God tells you, I'm not going to tolerate any of the runners on my team sitting on the track with the baton in hand. If you don't have a faith that liberates you, then you're going to continue on with the faith that holds you up, that supports you. If it's not with glycogen, it'll be with lactic acid. But you're going to continue running. The race isn't always for the fastest. Battles aren't always for the strongest, but for those that persevere until the end. I know sometimes you don't feel like running, so here's the word. You're going to continue running even if you don't feel like it.